Hello my dear friends, myself is Dr. Avinash Amangi. I am your biology mentor and we were discussing regarding what the SSLC question paper, model question paper majorly and I am from what Gurudev Academy and we'll have a discussion over the left part of this particularly model question paper 1, right. So here what they mentioned is use of non-biodegradable substances should be what minimized and why, right. So that what we should understand why we should what the particularly avoid this non biodegradable substances, right. So now what this is actually non biodegradable substances or the particularly what waste does not get they does not decompose, right. Then they actually accumulate in the particularly what environment and causes what biomagnification. Now what is this biomagnification? Addition of something called as what the toxicants inside the environment, right. That itself what we are going to call it as biomagnification, right. As a result of this accumulation they pollute the particularly what soil and water, understanding. Then they pollute the particularly what environment. If such waste are what burnt, they pollute the particularly what air. So because of this only like what we should minimize this particularly biodegradable and mainly non-biodegradable substances, right. So because of that only we have to understand the importance of what this particularly what biodegradable waste materials even, and we have to use this particularly what biodegradable type of what the materials, right. So which can get easily what decompose. The next question is that is related with respect to the what the particularly what again 2 into 2, that is what the total 4 marks it is, that is question number what 32. How is what actually ozone layer is formed? Then protection of ozone layer is necessary and why? That what we have to give the what reasons here, understanding. So majorly if you consider the formation of ozone, how it is going to take place, the reaction of what UV radiation. Now from the sun the light is going to come and that light is nothing but what this particularly what UV radiation. So that is going to get react with what this particularly O2 or dioxygen molecule, right. Either we can call it as what O2 or we can call it as what a dioxygen molecule, which results in the formation of what the O3, right, which result in the formation of what O3. This UV light react with respect to the what oxygen and form something called as what O3. Then the UV radiation splits this particularly what oxygen molecule into the what free oxygen or O atom, right. So these atoms combine with what molecular form of what oxygen to form something called as what ozone, right. O3 what it is going to do majorly UV radiation what it is going to do, it is going to split up this particularly what oxygen molecule and forms what O atom or only like what oxygen. That oxygen is going to react with respect to the what molecular form of oxygen to form something called as what O3, right. So like this the particularly formation of ozone is going to take place. Now protection of what ozone layer is what necessary. Consider like the ozone layer absorbs what 97 to 99% of what sun's incoming ultraviolet radiations, right. So that is what we are going to call it as UVB, right. Then this fundamental to protecting the life on what particularly earth surface, what from the exposure of what harmful levels of what these particularly radiations which can damage and what disturb this particularly DNA, right. Now what is going to happen if consider there is a duplication with respect to this particularly ozone layer, right. Then what will happen, this UV radiation which is coming from the sun directly will get penetrate and come and fall onto the particularly earth surface, right. And that can lead into the what even the acid rain formation, right. And not only the acid rain but even it can damage this particularly what the DNA, and when the DNA get what mutated, the like what is going to happen majorly like what cause of what cancer even you can find out with respect to this particularly what mutation, right. Then the next question or question it is actually with respect to that particularly 32 question or question, right. So that is give an example for what food chain of an aquatic ecosystem. If there is an increase in the number of what organism, right, with respect to the what the third tropical level, right, if there is, right, how does this is going to affect on with respect to the what food chain. What we have to do is we have to give an example with respect to the what this particularly food chain. Now what we know, the food chain distribution is into the what with respect to the tropical levels, right? It is with respect to the what, the particularly tropical levels, right? So energy is going to pass from one tropical level to the next tropical level. Majorly we are going to call it as here the 10% law, means 10% of the energy is going to pass on to the each tropical level. So we'll see like with respect to this only. Majorly like they have given what one kind of what example here, that is an example of an aquatic food chain is, what we know is in water, what we are finding out, the primary producers are what, the phytoplanktons, following to them are what, the zooplanktons. Then on zooplanktons, who is going to eat the zooplanktons? The small fishes, and then the particularly what, the large fishes which are present onto the small fishes, right? Then if the number of what organism in the third tropical level, small fish majorly, right, what they have told over here with respect to this part of the question is, if there is an increase in the number of what organism in third tropical level. Now which is the third tropical level here is the small fishes, right? So small fishes increases the population of the zooplanktons which is at the second tropical level. This is what second, this is third, this is what fourth, and this is what first majorly, right? So will likely to what decrease, right? So due to the what increased predation, conversely what is going to happen, the population of what phytoplankton which is at the what, the first tropical level might also what decrease due to the what increased grazing by the larger zooplankton population. Understanding? Then the population of what large fish, the fourth tropical level, might initially increase due to the greater food availability, right? So but this increase could be unsustainable if the small fish population is what depleted, right? So overall this is what the reason when there will be like what this third tropical level is going to get what affect, right? So you should concentrate on whatever this particularly the points are. Right, the next question, that is nothing but here they have mentioned related with respect to the what, the particularly Mendelian concept, right? So what they say is the round seed producing, that is what the capital R pea plant is hybridized with respect to the what wrinkled seed producing, that is what small r pea plants, right? Then mention the particularly what results obtained in F2 generation with the help of what, the particularly checkerboard, and write the genotypic ratio of this particularly what plant. What we have to understand over here is they have mentioned is the condition called as what, capital R, which is actually crossed with what, small r. Now what this capital R says, this capital R is nothing but here it is a round, right? That is what phenotype, and here it is wrinkle, right? So round is actually, so capital R, this capital letters represents what, majorly the dominant one, and the small r represents what, the majorly the recessive formed one, right? So what this represents here, it represents the particularly dominant character and it represents the particularly what, recessive character. So round and wrinkle is the particularly phenotype over here is, right? What it is, it's a phenotype, and so capital R, small r, these are the alleles. Then what it is nothing but the particularly genotype. In what happened over with respect to the what first generation, what we are finding out over here is this capital R which is a homozygous allele, which is what, homozygous allele. Homozygous allele means identical allele, both of them are what, capital R both looks identical, right? Here small r both looks what, identical, right? So then they are going to produce something called as only one type of gamete, that is capital R and small r, right? When these are going to get combined, what it is going to form, the particularly capital R and small r, right? So what it is, the round, as what I have told you, capital letter represents what, the dominant character, then definitely whatever into this particularly F1 generation or the particularly first filial generation, what I am finding out over here is this capital R small r which is being heterozygous. This condition is what here now, heterozygous type. This condition is heterozygous, right? And this represents something called as what, a round over here, as the round is dominant on what, wrinkle, right? So this is what the particularly F1 generation. Now what they are asking, they are asking with respect to the what, the F2 generation, right? So that what we have to actually mention over here. So what I am going to take this both of them, right? When F1 generation is self crossed, capital R small r which is crossed with the capital R small r, right? So both of them are what here, the particularly round, understanding, both of them are what, round, and here it is what, the particularly round, understanding, as round dominant over the particular wrinkle. Now when we see it is being what, the particularly heterozygous condition, it is going to produce what, the two types of what, gametes. The female is going to produce two types of gametes, capital R small r, and male is even going to produce what, the two types of gamete, capital R small r. Then this is known to be the particularly the checkerboard, or the checkerboard what we are going to represent here. So this is known to be the particularly checkerboard here. Now what we are finding out with respect to the checkerboard, right? This capital R, then capital R, small r, capital R, small r, then small r, right? So crossing, how we have to do? First you have to follow over here is, and then you take this R even and cross over here, right? Then you take this R, cross over here, then you take this R and cross over. Understanding? Now what it is going to represent? What we know is over here is this capital R, what it is? It is nothing but what, round. Understanding? It is round. And then what we know, capital R is dominant over what, small r, then definitely what we are finding out here is the round, right? Heterozygous condition. Here also what it is, the round, right? Then small r, which is nothing but what, wrinkle. So whatever the character which is actually left out with respect to the first parental generation, that even got expressed in overall, this chart represents what, the particularly F2 generation. This represents the F2 generation character. Understanding? Now with respect to this F2 generation only, what we are finding out, what even they have asked something called as what, a genotypic ratio of this particularly plant, right? So we should not get confused, round and wrinkle, or this round wrinkle is what actual phenotype which is you are seeing with respect to your naked eyes. The genotype which is nothing but what, this round is coded by means of this type of what, alleles here, right? So identical allele is homozygous, non-identical alleles are what, heterozygous. So what we have to find out, the identical alleles, what do identical alleles here, I am finding out the capital R, right, is 2, right? Then small r is 2, then small r. So these alleles what I have got, then what I have to calculate, I have to calculate something called how many of them are what, capital R. So what you are finding over here is 1 is the capital R, right, which is what, round. Then 2 of them, that is capital R, small r, heterozygous type of allele, non-identical types, right? So what I am finding out over is 2, right? Then here the identical type of what, alleles, again what we are finding out, the 1. So ratio will be like what, 1:2:1. So this is known to be what, the particularly genotypic ratio. This is known as the genotypic ratio, right? Now they even ask something called as what, phenotypic ratio. Phenotypically what I am saying, maybe it is heterozygous, but character is what, round. Maybe it is homozygous, but what it is, character is round. So overall here 3 of them are what, round. 3 of them are what, round. 1 is what, the particularly wrinkle over here. So this is known to be the like the phenotypic character. This is known as the phenotypic ratio, right? So this is known to be the phenotypic ratio, right? So genotypic ratio is 1 is to 2 is to 1, right, which represents this particularly allelic format, capital R, capital R, capital R, small r, small r, small r, right. Genotypic ratio, the character, that is what, 1 is to 2 is to 1. The phenotypic ratio, which is nothing but the character which actually we see with respect to our naked eyes, that is round and wrinkle, right. So round of them are what, 3 of them are round and 1 is what, the particularly wrinkle. So this is what the overall representation of this particularly question number 33, right. So we will go ahead with respect to the next question, right. So how is the sex of a child will be determined in the particularly what, human being, right. So what we have to understand, the total number of chromosomes, total number of chromosomes, total number I am asking. So total number of chromosome is 46, right. As these chromosomes, total number 46 chromosomes are paired in nature, so only we call it as diploid organism. So as chromosomes are paired, I am going to represent it as 223. Understanding? Now when it is 223, what I am finding out over here is, there with respect to this 223, some of them are what, autosomes, right, and some of them are what, allosomes. So what is this particularly autosome? Autosome is nothing but what, somatic chromosome, means bodily chromosome. Understanding? Like we know there is a difference with respect to the what, sex of this particularly human being. We know as a male and female, right. So with respect to the autosome, if you consider, the bodily development is what, exactly same only what we are going to find out. Like we have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, 2 ears. So like that of what the characters what we are going to find out with respect to the somatic chromosomes. Allosome, which is nothing but what we call it as sex determining one. It is known to be the what, sex determining or sex determination chromosomes, right. They are nothing but what, allosomes. Now what these allosomes are, we are going to find out. In female we will find out what, XX type allosomes, and in male we are going to find out XY. So it is with respect to the what, female, and this is with respect to the what, mainly the male. Understanding? Now consider this condition. If you find out the last question only what we have discussed here, the both the X looks similar, means what, identical type of what, allele, right, identical type of chromosomes, homozygous chromosome what we are going to call it as. Then here it is what, the heterozygous type 1, right. So heterozygous means what, two different. Then homozygous can form only one type of gamete, and heterozygous can form what, two types of what, gametes. So that what we will see actually how it is going to show us, right. So with respect to the allosomes, including the autosomes and allosomes only what we are going to represent. So as we know 223 pairs, right. So I will consider it as what, male, I will consider here it as what, female, right. Now female autosomes how many? Commonly 222. Allosome is what, XX, XY, right. So here if I consider these autosomes only with respect to this particularly male also, right. So what I will find out, the 222 plus one pair of what, this XY. Understanding? So this 223, this is 22 pairs of what, the particular autosome, and one pair, so which makes what, 223 pairs. Total number is what, 46, right. Same way only here, 222 plus XX. Understanding? Then definitely the gamete formed will be this particularly male is going to form 211 plus 1X. Understanding? This is what, one type of gamete, and again is being condition being what, heterozygous. These both of them are not identical, they are non-identical, so only we call it as heterozygous. 211 plus Y, right. Then here what I am finding out, only one type of gamete actually, right. So that is what, 211 plus X, right. So one more will be there, that is what, 211 plus X. So identical type of allele, so only one type of what, gamete only what we are going to find out. So consider if this is going to get fused, what I am going to find out, 222 plus XX, right. Understanding? And here this is 222 plus XY. right? So which is nothing but what, the female, male, right? So character wise consider, right, splitting of this, that is here this 222 plus xx, here it is 222 plus xx, what it is nothing but female, understanding, here 222 plus xy, which is nothing but the particularly what, male. Then with respect to this overallly, what we can understand over is the sex of a child will be determined in human being by means of whom, the particularly what, male is going to determine the sex of this particularly what, baby, right? So that is what the explanation part of this particularly, like how this particularly sex of a child will be determined in particularly human beings, right? So either or else directly to autosomes, if you won't include directly, you can include the allosomes, and allosome, that is xx or xy, and then go on solving with respect to that, you will get the particularly what answer. Then how do this particularly Mendel experiment shows that the parental traits are what, inherited, this is our question, right, independently to the what, the offspring of the next generation. So how he framed it independently, how this particularly offspring being what, different from even the particular parent it is, right? So answer, if you consider in this particularly dihybrid cross, the Mendel what selected two pair of what, contrasting characters, and they were what, crossed. Then the resultant cross showed that segregation of trait of what, both the particularly what, parents, which indicated the trait were inherited independently. So because of that only, like what this dihybrid cross is, the round yellow, the characters is crossed with the wrinkle green, understanding. So when he have carried out this such kind of what, crossing, what he have found out over here is he chosen what, the two characters, this is the shape of the seed, right, and this is nothing but what, the color of the seed, understanding. Here also wrinkle is the shape of the seed, right, and the particularly small y is color of the particularly what, seed. So two characters, one is shape and one more is what, color, right? With respect to that only, when he crossed, what he have found out ratio is, phenotypic ratio is 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1. So with respect to this ratio only, what we have found out is 9 of them were the round yellow, right? So which maintained the particularly what, parental character, right? Then 3 of them were what, round green, right? So round green, which is non-parental combination, right? Then the particularly 3 of them were the wrinkle yellow, understanding, again a non-parental combination, and lastly which is being recessive, that is nothing but what, the wrinkle green, which is recessive in form, right? So that even what showed this all type of what, the characters, and that itself represents something called as what, the Mendelian characters, which is actually parentally inherited traits are what, inherited independently, they are what, independent of what, each other, the genes are of independent of what, each other, that what actually the Mendel represented it, right? Then the next question is, that is nothing but how are the phototropism, and thigmotropism and the chemotropism coordinated in the apparent movement of this particularly what, creeper, that is what, the climbing of this particularly plant towards the particularly directions, understanding. So what I am going to find out over here is answer. So one by one we'll see. First we'll understand what exactly this phototropism is. Now, what phototropism? The movement of the plant or other organism in response to the what, light is called as what, phototropism. The plant is going to move towards what, light, that itself what we are going to call it as phototropism. The movement can be either what, towards the light or away from the what, light, right? So what it means, the stem grows in directions of what, sunlight, and that is what we are going to call it as positively phototropic, and the majorly the root which is going to grow away from it, that is negatively phototropic, which is negatively phototropic. What we are doing here, we are understanding this each terminologies, phototropism, thigmotropism and chemotropism. Now this thigmotropism, what it is, that is the growing or developing the particularly movements made through plants in response to the what contact with the solid objects, with what we are going to call it as substratum. With respect to the substratum only the plant is going to grow, and that type of what movement only what we are going to call it as thigmotropism, right? Then are called as what? The particular thigmotropism. This type of movement are usually seen in tendrils and the particularly what? Twinners, right? And this movement is also referred to as haptotropism. This is even called as what? Haptotropism. Now majorly like what? Tendrils of the plant, what you have observed, what it is going to form, it is going to find out something called as what? Support, and that support will be the solid type of what? Support. So it is going to move towards that particularly thing, and that type of what movement itself what we are going to call it as the thigmotropism, which is going to usually take place with respect to the what? The tendril, and even with respect to the what? This particular twinners, right? Then what we are finding out? The chemotropism, the plant movement in reaction to the what? Chemical stimuli, with respect to the what? Chemicals, or the mainly the nutritional content. So there the movement you can find out is known as what? The chemotropism. Then the growth response is what? Positive chemotropism, and when it is directed towards what? Stimulus. And when the growth response is away from the particularly stimulus, it is called as what? Negative chemotropism. That is, example is growth of the particularly pollen tube towards the particularly ovule. Some of the like what? The chemical based only the stimulus or responses brought with respect to this particularly what? Plant, right? So overall these all things are included with respect to this particularly what? Creeper, right? So now what it is like? The particularly phototropism, thigmotropism and chemotropisms are coordinated in the apparent movement of this particularly creeper through a process called as what? The tropic response. This is what we are going to call it as the tropic response. Understanding? Then the phototropism involves the growth of the plant towards or away from this particularly water light. Understanding? Then the thigmotropism involves the growth of the plant towards the away or towards what? Towards or away from this particularly solid support. So that all actually initiates something called as what? This creeper to get what? Carry out its movement, right? So we'll see the next question, that is again our question, that what they have mentioned, what is actually the role of what? Insulin, estrogen and the thyroxine hormone in our body, right? So they are asking what exactly these people are going to do inside our body or our system, right? So if you consider over insulin regulates what? The blood glucose level, right? So it is going to regulate what? The blood glucose level. Estrogen regulates something called as what? The female reproductive system. Majorly estrogen is going to carry out ovulation, right? And the secondary what? Sexual characters even can be developed by means of this estrogen. Here thyroxine actually what? Regulates metabolism, that is what? Mainly the heart rate, then even what you can find out? The particularly body temperature. So thyroxine itself is responsible for the regulation like what? Heart rate, controlling of this or maintaining of this particular heart rate, and even the maintaining of what? The body temperature. That what you are going to find out. So these are the what? Roles of this particularly insulin, estrogen and thyroxine, right? Then that is nothing but what is actually the cross pollination, and what are the changes that occurs in this particularly what? Flower after the fertilization. Cross pollination majorly means what? This actually even plant develops this cross pollination method just to avoid something called as what? Inbreeding depression. Generation wise same type of what? Pollination if it is taking place, then definitely the depression is going to take place with respect to the genetic character. So that itself here, the cross pollination means what? It is the process where the pollen from the male anther of what? One flower is transferred to the what? The female stigma of the another flower, right? Which is actually leading to the what? Fertilization. Then after the what? Fertilization, several changes occur in this particularly what? Flower, right? So what will happen over here? Cross pollination means the pollen from the what? Male anther of what? One flower, a different flower, is transferred to the what? Female of what? Stigma of another flower, right? Which lead what? Into the what? Fertilization, where the male and female gamete is going to get fused. After fertilization, what will happen? Several changes we are going to get. That is nothing but the ovary begins to what? Develop into a fruit, and the ovule develop into the what? The particularly seed, right? Then the petals and the other non-reproductive part of whether fall off as the plant focuses only with respect to the formation of seed and the formation of what? Fruit, or the development of this particularly fruit. So remaining all part is going to get shed off, only who is going to get developed? Seed as well as what? The fruit is going to develop. So these are the what? After fertilization event is going to take place, right? Now what exactly is they are asking with respect to the what question? That is, the cross pollination majorly is essential for the genetic diversity. Genetic variations is what actually important with respect to the what? Plant, so that different characters to be what? Combined over, so that the plant species can be even what? Maintained over. And after the what? Fertilization, flower undergoes what? Significant changes such as what? Development of fruits and seeds, right? So cross pollination is necessary for what purpose? The genetic variations with respect to the what? Plant, right? Then what they have asked here, draw what? The diagram which shows the structure of what? The human brain, and label the what? The following parts: cerebrum as well as what? Cerebellum. So you should draw this particular easy diagram. What you are going to find out? This is what the diagrammatic view, right? So you should draw these all structures. They mentioned it only like what? The representation of cerebrum, right? So these major portion, this major portion, what we are going to call it as the particularly what? Cerebrum here, right? And with respect to this particularly what? Hindbrain part only, who is there? Cerebellum, right? Now hindbrain part consists of what? This particularly pons medulla, pons, and as well as what? The medulla. Following to that, what we are finding out? The particularly cerebellum. So here we have to mention one is cerebrum and one more is the cerebellum. Only you have to draw a simple diagram, draw this, and whatever the cerebrum part, mention that cerebrum, mention it as what? Cerebellum. This much only what they have asked with respect to that particular type of what? Question, right? Then this is what actually the last question, that is nothing but what? Answer the following question, that is, explain the process of what? Digestion in the what? Small intestine of what? Man. How actually the digestion, you should not explain overally whole digestion procedure, only they are asking regarding what? Small intestine. Now what is going to happen with respect to the what? Small intestine? With respect to the small intestine, what we are finding out, the muscles of the small intestine mix food, right? Small intestine muscle is going to mix what? This particularly food with the digestive juices, right? Which is actually from what? The pancreas. Who is going to give? The pancreas, the liver, and the particularly what? Intestine, which carries what? Juices, right? And push this mixture forward for the further digestion. Now what it is going to do? Small intestine, its muscle, and even what? With respect to the pancreas and liver, they are going to carry out what? Juices. These juices consist of what? Some of the digestive enzymes, right? Which is going to carry out what? A digestion. Further, it is going to push up this particularly what? Food towards what? The particularly large intestine. The walls of this particularly small intestine, what it is going to do? It is going to absorb the water and the digested nutrient into our bloodstream. As what we know with respect to this particularly what? The small intestine, we will find out something called as what? Finger like projections. Those finger like projection, what we are going to call it as villi, right? And whatever this the digested nutrient should get enter into what? The bloodstream. So how it is going to get enter? It is going to enter with respect to the what? Villi. Villis are present with respect to this particularly small intestines. You will find out the presence of villi with respect to the what? Small intestine, which is going to absorb something called as this particularly digested nutrient, and pass on with respect to the what? The blood streams. So overall this is what the particularly what we are going to find out, the digestive system of what? The particular man, right? So only this much is what required for this particularly what? Answer, right? Again one more question with respect to that only, one more part of it is, mention the importance of what? The double circulation in the body, right? Why this particularly double circulation? Mainly double circulation is going to take place with respect to the blood. Who is going to carry out? Heart is going to carry out. Our heart is what? Four chambered heart. There is, you are going to find as auricular, ventricle, right? Two auricles, two ventricles. One is the right auricle, right ventricle, left auricle, left ventricle, right? So like that what it is actually divided. So there it is going to carry out what double circulation, where there will not be any mixing of this particularly oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. So answer what it says, it is very significant as it allows for a proper circulation of what blood without the particularly what mixing of this particularly oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. This separation of the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood allows for an efficient supply of what oxygen to the body cells and delivers and greater what the particularly blood flows. Understanding? This actually the double circulation is required for what the proper supplement of what this particularly oxygen molecule with respect to the what remaining all cells of what our body. So for that overallly this double circulation is what necessary, right? And this is what the particularly what the last question of this particularly 38th part B, that is what are the actual differences between the xylem and phloem, as there are what two parts 38A and B. So few aspects of what few points only what we have to mention over here, right? So they asked here the difference between the xylem and phloem tissues. So what we are finding out, xylem is actually a complex tissue of the particularly what plant that helps in the transportation of what, the transportation of water as well as what nutrients in the particularly plant, right? Then if you find out the phloem, what it is, xylem is known to be orally what we can call it as xylem as the water conducting tissue, right? Water conducting tissue, understanding, and which will actually help in the particularly transportation of what this particularly water as well as what nutrient in the particularly plant. Then what phloem is going to do, phloem actually refers to as the living tissue, right, which helps in the transportation of what the food and organic material in the plant. So orally what we are going to call it as, phloem is known to be the food conducting tissue. Phloem is known to be the food conducting tissue, understanding? So like this of what the few differences are what actually required with respect to this particularly part A, as this 38th question consists of part A and part B, right? So thank you so much. This is overallly the particularly model question paper 1, majorly a biological part. I am your mentor, that is Dr. Avinash Amangi. I am from what Gurudev PU College. Please do what, subscribe our channels, like, share and even what comment on it. Thank you so much.